There are some intellectuals in the Islamic world that are trying to combat this. I mean, there's yourself, you've been doing this for a long time now, Dr. Wafa Sultan, Ayan Hirsi Ali, perhaps even Irshad Manji. You're not treated with a great deal of respect in the Islamic world. To some extent, when you say these things in the West from a secular perspective, you're dismissed as non-authentic, which is a terrible no-no in this day and age. It's almost if you're off the Islamic reservation, if you're challenging anything to do with Islam, even people in the West who would normally support things like free speech, women's rights, secularism, all that sort of thing, will dismiss you because you're not really a Muslim.
Yes, this in fact has been a legacy really of the mindset that was produced by a whole generation of Marxist and Freudian scholars who would dismiss your arguments not on the basis of evidence, logic, coherence, but because of the origins, the genesis of the argument. Hence, we call it the genetic fallacy. So they would say something like, well, of course you would argue like that. You're a bourgeois, and Freudians would say, of course you would argue like that because of your upbringing and so on. And this refusal to look at the evidence and only to dismiss what you have to say because of the provenance.
It seems to me there is a basic, dare I say it, philosophical disagreement here which absolutely underpins all this, and it's to do with the West, and that is the idea of objective knowledge. And I don't want to sort of lose our audience here by getting all highfalutin or anything, but the sky is blue. But if you say the sky is blue, and when someone can say, well, you're just saying that because you're a Jew, or you're an American, or you're a woman, or you're black, and so the sky is not blue based on the fact that you are a this, you are a that. I mean, the sky is or is not blue. The fact of it being blue or not is not changed by whoever says it. But in the modern secular leftist parlance, where there is no objective reality, and who are we to say, and it's all your perspective. The sky may or may not be blue depending on your perspective. If we think like that, then we can't know anything, and we're going to get into a situation where all information or knowledge is completely malleable, and whoever's in authority can determine what reality is. I mean, that way lies 1984 and the inner party.
Yes, absolutely. You put it well. I mean, you've summarized the whole situation and problem extremely well. This is the part of the postmodernist outlook where extreme relativism prevails. That's to say, as you said, there's no such thing as the objective truth, and who are we to say that what they're saying is wrong? Who are we to say that we are right? And the result is we cannot move forward. There's no basis for any kind of argument. But in fact, the extreme relativism of that kind is philosophically incoherent because by claiming that all knowledge is relative, you are in fact claiming something which is not relative. You're claiming you're putting forward an absolutist position. So there's a contradiction right from the beginning in their arguments, and it stops all inquiry dead in its tracks if you think that there's no such thing as a truth. I mean, that's been all the great scientists. In fact, this is one of my arguments in my new book called Defending the West. One of the driving forces in Western civilization has been this drive towards objective knowledge, and knowledge for the sake of knowledge, the idea that we may not actually get the absolute truth, but we are hopefully over the years getting nearer to the truth. But the ideal of an objective truth is always there. But this seems to have been abandoned completely, and so you have complete and utter nonsense.
I wonder if what's really happening with this Islamist challenge to the West is not actually so much about the challenge from the radical Islamists themselves. It's an opportunistic kind of an attack. I mean, they see the West as perhaps weakened. And a person that I talk to every week, a guy called Evan Sayat, who's a conservative activist and a satirist who lives in Los Angeles, suggested that this is more like it's like the AIDS virus. AIDS doesn't kill you. AIDS weakens your immune system so that you don't fight off infection. In fact, radical Islam is simply the symptom. The real disease, it's not about them. It's about us and about the fact that we no longer seem to be, as a culture, as a civilization, able to fight back.
Right. This is one of the sad things. Having been brought up on I don't know how many generations of young people have been brought up on relativism like that, are not going to be able to defend their own values, are they? If they've been told, well, what is the truth, if they're not even sure of that, if they're not sure of their own values, and that these values are of any worth, then of course they're not going to be in a position to defend that. It has indeed left them with extraordinary vulnerable, weak position. It's just the young seem incapable of discerning the truth, discerning the strengths of their own civilization.
We're actually not allowed anymore officially to talk about our civilization as being unique or strong or good. In fact, if anything, multiculturalism in the modern sense teaches us that all religions are equally good except Western culture, which is terribly bad, and we should be very, very ashamed of it. We're presented with this binary system. We either accept multiculturalism and accept that we in the West are bad and evil and should feel guilty about everything, and I'm not saying there aren't things we shouldn't feel guilty about. Clearly, obviously there are. But uniquely guilty, uniquely evil? The only alternative to this is presented as being, well, if you don't believe this, then you must be some racist, imperialist, triumphalist guy who wants to conquer the world and, enslave all people with brown skin. Is there something between those two polar opposites?
No, I agree. This is exactly what has happened. In my book, I'm sorry to keep going back to this.
Hey, we've all got books to sell. Go right ahead.
I actually cover exactly this aspect of this unilateral dismissal of Western imperialism, Western slavery, and Western racism, as though no other civilization had these things. I mean, Islamic imperialism actually destroyed civilization. I mean, British imperialism, however awful it may have been, actually defended. They gave back to India, for example, their own civilization by their research.
It was actually British researchers and academics that revived Sanskrit and sort of reconstructed Hindu civilization.
Absolutely. This is not the case with Islam. Islam actually has wiped out Eastern Christianity, for example, and same thing with racism. Racism is rife, absolutely rife in Japan, in China, and even in India. The whole caste system is thought to be based on color. The Sanskrit word is varna, which really means a color, originally meant color. And the darker skinned people in the south are despised. The fairer skinned people in the north are considered more beautiful, and so on.
And that's the origin of the caste system. We had the Brahmins and the warriors and the merchants.
Yes,
and the people
I think
on the
so. I mean, there's much disputed amongst anthropologists who don't really like to discuss the origins of beliefs. They prefer to just study the beliefs rather than assign origins to them. But it seems likely that it was based on certainly a kind of imperialism, which was imposed by people coming from the north.
Tell me about victimology, because many people in the West are managing to portray Islam, which is a pretty expansionist and triumphal faith, as somehow uniquely a victim in the modern world, which, given what's been going on, seems to use a euphemism, somewhat counterintuitive.
Well, absolutely. No, this is all part and parcel of the mindset, the last 60 years of education, both at the primary, secondary, and university level, that we've been inculcating in the minds of the young people. The West is to blame. It's all Western imperialism, Western racism, and so on.
We're presented with two poles of being. One is to be racist, imperialist oppressors, and the other is to be weak multiculturalists. What's the alternative, do you think?